apart Western society. Here is our report.
A Belgian terror analyst has told Euronews that the Manchester attack is an attempt to split British society. I think that here we must also understand that the objective is to create emotional reactions that will garner or energize the mixing up of Islam, Islamism, jihadism. So it is in this perspective of fragmenting, creating divisions within Western society.
De fragmenter, de créer des clivages au sein des tissus sociaux occidentaux.
Didier Leroy says that our societies are in some way becoming more closed owing to recent political developments.
Si la bataille militaire...
If the military battle is currently going against the Islamic State, I think it's still too early to declare an ideological victory.
Déclaré.
And I think that one of the main victories that ISIL has reaped is, in particular, to have strongly influenced the Brexit vote, and even by extension, the presidential election in the US.
L'élection présidentielle aux États-Unis.
The fight against terrorism will also be on the agenda of Donald Trump's trip to Europe. The US president arrives in Brussels today. He will have a first working meeting with the Belgian Prime Minister. On Thursday morning, Trump will meet with the presidents of the European Commission and the European Council. In the afternoon, he will meet his NATO counterparts for a summit of the Transatlantic Alliance. Ian Lesser of the German Marshall Fund of the United States explained what is at stake to our correspondent Effie Kutsukosta.
What the president does and says here will matter a great deal. It's largely not so much about detailed substance, it's about the symbolism of his visit and simply saying, recommitting in a sense to American interest in Europe. I'm sure he will do that. I'm sure he will talk about the event in Manchester. Because this counterterrorism problem was at the top of his agenda to begin with. And so I think he will find it a very natural and frankly a right thing to talk about with European partners.
But before Brussels, Donald Trump will stop in Italy and meet this morning with Pope Francis at the Vatican.
Au Vatican.
Ready?
Follow the action from the 70th Cannes Film Festival all week on Euronews, Euronews.com and Euronews social media.
The UK's terror threat level is raised to critical and soldiers are to patrol key sites following the Manchester suicide attack.
United in grief, Manchester's people stand together in the face of mindless violence.
US President Donald Trump arrives in Italy amid tight security ahead of a much-anticipated meeting with the Pope.
English giants Manchester United are in Stockholm ahead of their Europa League final against Dutch youngsters Ajax.
Britain has raised its security threat level from severe to critical following the suicide bombing in Manchester, which killed 22 people. The move means that further attacks may be imminent. Prime Minister Theresa May made the announcement from Downing Street after chairing another emergency Cobra meeting.
The change in the threat level means that there will be additional resources and support made available to the police as they work to keep us all safe. This means that armed police officers responsible for duties such as guarding key sites will be replaced by members of the armed forces, which will allow the police to significantly increase the number of armed officers on patrol in key locations.
Police have named Salman Abedi as the suspected suicide bomber, a 22-year-old of Libyan descent but British-born. Several properties in Manchester have also been raided. Investigators have so far been unable to rule out if the bomber acted alone. A top officer in the Metropolitan Police says the investigation is making progress.
We'll be aware of the arrest that's been made, the searches that are ongoing, and there's more work of that type continuing at the moment. However, as we've said throughout the last 24 hours, the critical line of inquiry for us is looking at whether the dead terrorist was acting alone or as part of a group.
Monday night's attack at the end of a pop concert at the Manchester Arena is the UK's worst terror incident since the 2005 London transport bombing. Many of the 22 dead and scores of injured were children and young people. The bomber detonated his device just as people were leaving the Ariana Grande concert in order to cause maximum carnage.
A city united in the presence of national and local political figures and community leaders. Thousands attended a vigil in central Manchester on Tuesday night.
The people of Manchester will remember the victims forever, and we will defy the terrorists by all our diverse communities, working together cohesively and with mutual respect.
Vigils were held across Britain, and at a garden party at Buckingham Palace, the Queen and Prince Philip joined guests in observing a minute's silence. Prime Minister Theresa May expressed her grief, signing a book of condolence for victims in Manchester, where she visited police headquarters and a children's hospital. Concert goer Shauna Hardy says she feels lucky to be alive.
I just remember the smell. I can't describe it. It was a really awful smell, and there was just alarms going off, police everywhere, sirens everywhere, people running, screaming. It was just crazy, absolutely crazy.
Eager to help victims in a practical sense, locals lined up to give blood.
I heard the news this morning when I woke up, and I've lived in Manchester for just over a year, and my heart breaks for the people, and just thought, what can I do? And I listened to the radio and they said people are calling for blood, and got a blood type that they're asking for, so I just got straight down here.
Manchester is traumatised, its people remembering those they've lost, but standing resilient and ready to face the future.
US President Donald Trump has arrived in Italy after leaving the Middle East, where he spent the last 2 days in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Italy is the third leg of Trump's first international trip since taking office. Massive security precautions have been taken in Rome, with areas around the presidential palace, Vatican City and the American ambassador's residence temporarily closed to traffic. Although Trump is expected to hold talks with Italian leaders, it's his meeting with Pope Francis which has sparked interest. The pair have sparred at a distance on issues including migration, climate change and Islam. However, Trump is due to spend less than 24 hours in Italy before flying to Brussels for talks with European Union and NATO chiefs. On Thursday, he'll return for a G7 summit in Sicily.
In Brussels, demonstrators have staged a sit-in inside a European Commission building calling on the EU to stop subsidising the arms industry. The protest was held ahead of a major NATO summit in the city, which Donald Trump is due to attend. The small group pitched tents in the lobby of the building surrounding the area with tape and playing board games. They oppose EU plans to pool public money to help pay for joint military projects.
There was disappointment but no surprise in Greece after Eurozone finance ministers meeting in Brussels failed to reach agreement on the release of billions in new loan money. The sticking point is the International Monetary Fund joining the loan programme amid some debt relief for Greece. The Greek government had hoped it would be enough that its parliament had approved future cuts in pensions and other social payments along with tax increases, but Brussels wants all previously agreed reforms implemented. On the streets of Athens, this man said, nothing can be done about the debt and there can't be any recovery with the way the economy is going. I believe the lenders are trying to gain time for their own reasons. One woman blamed the Greek government, saying, I'm disgusted, I don't expect anything from them, I'm not hopeful, and I believe everything they say is a lie. Greece needs new cash from the Eurozone to avoid a default in July, when it has to repay 7.3 billion euros of previous loans. Can that happen? Well, the Greek and German finance ministers have said a deal could be reached when the Eurozone ministers meet again in 3 weeks' time.
Pro-government supporters in Venezuela march in support of their president's plans for a new constituent assembly. Nicolas Maduro has vowed to push ahead with the replacement Congress despite dissent within his own ranks and major protests across the country. Maduro has now signed regulations setting out the voting process. Addressing his supporters, Maduro detailed how the new assembly will be partially elected by votes at a municipal level and partially by different groups, including workers, farmers, students and indigenous people. He's presented the move as a response to a popular desire for votes, not bullets, claiming it's the opposition which has delayed regional elections. The assembly will later be instrumental in writing a revised constitution for the country.
Poderosa Asamblea Nacional Constituyente.
The head of the pro-government Electoral Council confirmed that voting for the new Congress will be held sometime in July. Meanwhile, government critics have once again clashed with police. Opposition leaders say Maduro's project is a sham designed to avoid a presidential vote next year and to keep him in power despite a ruined economy.
The former CIA chief has testified that Russia brazenly interfered in the U.S. presidential election, something Moscow denies. John Brennan told a congressional committee it became clear last summer that Moscow was trying to sway the election and that he warned the head of Russia's FSB security service, don't do it.
I warned Mr. Bortnikov that if Russia pursued this course, it would destroy any near-term prospect for improvement in relations between Washington and Moscow, and would undermine constructive engagement, even on matters of mutual interest. As I expected, Mr. Bortnikov denied that Russia was doing anything to influence our presidential election, claiming that Moscow is a traditional target of blame by Washington for such activities.
U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded that Moscow hacked and leaked the emails of senior Democrats as part of efforts to tilt the November election campaign and help Republican President Donald Trump. Both Moscow and Trump have consistently denied any collusion.
Defying international condemnation, North Korea says its recent missile tests are a legitimate act of self-defense by a fully fledged nuclear power. A diplomat from the isolated nation told a UN disarmament conference in Geneva that Pyongyang's tests are not against international law and that the US is aggravating the situation on the Korean peninsula. The North says it successfully tested what it called an intermediate-range ballistic missile on Sunday, its second test in a week. Amid rising tensions, South Korea's military fired warning shots at a suspected drone, and the American Defense Intelligence Agency director said North Korea's on a clear path to obtaining a nuclear-armed missile capable of striking the US.
At least 4 people have been killed and more than a dozen wounded after a car bomb exploded in the Syrian city of Homs. Tuesday's blast came only 2 days after the city fell under full government control for the first time since 2011. There was a separate car bombing at a Shiite Muslim shrine south of Damascus. It's reported the police destroyed the vehicle carrying 2 suicide attackers. 1 civilian was also killed. On Sunday, the Syrian government announced that it controlled all of Homs following an evacuation deal with rebels. The International Space Station has undergone urgent repairs after a critical relay box abruptly failed. The replacement job fell to 2 astronauts, including Commander Peggy Whitson, the world's most experienced female astronaut. She now ties the record for the most spacewalks by an American at 10. While a second relay box managed the ISS's data load after Saturday's breakdown, NASA was forced to scramble the spacewalk in order to restore backup capability.
Vincenzo Nibali has given Italy its first win of the 2017 Giro d'Italia after winning stage 16. The local favourite was victorious after 7 hours of dramatic action over the 222-kilometre course from Rivetta to Bormio. Race leader Tom Dumoulin was forced to stop for a toilet break and was angry after his rivals took advantage to launch an attack. He spent much of the race alone, but fought back to limit the damage and came in 2 minutes and 17 seconds down, which was enough to leave a 31-second cushion between him and Colombia's Nairo Quintana in second overall. Nibali and Mikel Landa were neck and neck as they rounded the final corner, and Landa broke first. But it was Nibali who had the power to edge out the Spaniard on the line and take home the nation's first win. Manchester United players and staff have paid tribute to the victims of the terror attack in Manchester ahead of their Europa League final. The English Giants take on Dutch youngsters Ajax in Sweden as they aim for a route into next season's Champions League. Jose Mourinho's first season at Old Trafford will be deemed by many as a failure unless they lift the trophy, and a second straight season outside the European Cup could affect their ability to recruit talent. Their opponents have also reflected on the tragedy in Manchester ahead of the match at the Friends Arena. Despite an average age of just 22, the side managed by Peter Bosz have displayed no signs of nerves in beating Schalke and Olympique Lyonnais to reach their first European final since 1996. Security is tight in Stockholm, and the Swedish Football Association said the city was already on high alert after Sweden suffered an attack in April when a truck drove into a crowd, killing 5 people. United take on Ajax on Wednesday evening.
The British actor and James Bond legend Sir Roger Moore has died at the age of 89. His family said in a statement that the movie star had lost a short but brave battle against cancer and passed away on Tuesday in Switzerland, where he lived. Moore was best known as the longest-running incarnation of James Bond, embracing the role in 7 movies, from Live and Let Die in 1973 to A View to a Kill in 1985.
This is impossible, I can't...
His earlier roles were in hit shows The Saint and The Persuaders. Later on, he devoted a lot of his time to humanitarian work.
There's a console up there!
Welcome to the Rolex Minute.
Since 1926, Wentworth Club has showcased some of golf's most celebrated players and events. And on Thursday, the 25th of May, the BMW PGA Championship tees off. At the first tournament of the inaugural Rolex series, stakes this year will be higher than ever, with 2016 Open champion Henrik Stenson headlining the tournament's world-class field. The most iconic race in the Formula One calendar takes place this Sunday as the streets of Monte Carlo hosts the 75th edition of the Monaco Grand Prix. One legendary figure wise to the challenge of racing round the Principality is three-time winner Sir Jackie Stewart.
If you want to win only one Grand Prix in your whole life, it would be the Monaco Grand Prix. It's even going to be more challenging this year with so much power and so much cornering speed. It's a bigger driver challenge than any other circuit. Monaco is the jewel in the crown.
This minute was brought to you by Rolex.
This watch has seen moments that last a second and moments that last forever. It's seen the road's most daring champions, man and machine pushed to the edge, and performances that redefine precision. Yet it's not until we look back that we understand that at those very moments we were standing on the edge of motorsport history. It doesn't just tell time, it tells history.
FX Pro. Trade Forex like a pro. FX Pro. Trade Forex like a pro.
Insight and analysis of all the latest news from the European Union. Coming up in The Brief from Brussels on Euronews.
Follow us on Euronews for all the Cannes Festival news. Stars, backstage, revelations, the thrill and the glamour. We'll take you right to the heart of the biggest film festival in the world, right to the final prizes on May 28th to discover who'll win the prestigious Palme d'Or. That's on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Watch our video-on-demand magazine for free on Euronews.com at any time and on our mobile apps.
You're an entrepreneur. You dream of creating your own business. Business Planet helps you get started or to grow. How do you find new clients? How do you get funding? Turn to digital or take advantage of green business opportunities. With the best international experts, we hear from entrepreneurs who've succeeded. They'll give you tips and tricks so that you can benefit from their experiences. A world tour of entrepreneur success stories on Business Planet, on Euronews and Euronews.com.
UK's terror threat level is raised to critical and soldiers are to patrol key sites following the Manchester suicide attack.
United in grief, Manchester's people stand together in the face of mindless violence.
US President Donald Trump arrives in Italy amid tight security ahead of a much-anticipated meeting with the Pope.
English giants Manchester United are in Stockholm ahead of their Europa League final against Dutch youngsters Ajax.
Britain has raised its security threat level from severe to critical following the suicide bombing in Manchester, which killed 22 people. The move means that further attacks may be imminent.